Hello and welcome to another episode of the Audible. We missed you last week, back this week. I don't know why I said we. This is going to be more of an experimental episode. It's just going to be me, Jake, talking to you guys and sharing my thoughts on what's going down in college football and the NFL. So yes, this is just going to be a solo episode. So if you're not a fan of things like that, where it's just one guy talking by himself, yelling about sports for an hour or so, then maybe it's not for you. All the topics I talk about will be clipped out up on Loud and Opinionated's YouTube channel, so you can watch it all there. I love some feedback. I love you guys talking to me. It's a great time. So without further ado, I want to talk about the first topic of discussion. Now, Derek and I are very open that we are big-time Husker fans. There's no discrediting that. It's just the facts. We're huge Husker fans. I was born and raised in Nebraska. He came later, but he went to UNL and we got him that way, but he's converted that way. That's fine. So as a Husker fan, the start to this season is difficult, and it's definitely not how we thought it would be. I'm sure everybody in the state of Nebraska thought that at this point in the season, Nebraska would be 3-0, looking strong going into the Michigan game. That's not the case. Mother Nature took our first game. We lost a heartbreaker to Colorado and just had, quite frankly, not a very good game against Troy. Let's be honest with ourselves. So we're sitting at 0-2. Very strong possibility if Nebraska doesn't bring their A game and they keep having the penalties and the turnovers that have plagued them in the first two games, very easily will be 0-3. That's not good. Any way you slice it, it's not a good situation. And yes, Nebraska is 0-2 for the first time since 1957. So it's not looking great for Husker Nation. But let me just say this. Before you start sharpening your pitchforks, which I know a lot of you already have, think about what you're doing. First of all, I think it also has to play in the fact that we've hyped up this guy way too much. I was a part of it. Everybody was a part of this. You get excited. You get somebody like Scott Frost, this hot young coach, not just physically, wink, but you get this young coach who took a team like UCF who didn't win a game and in 2 years makes them a 13-0 football team, including a victory against a pretty good Auburn team. So now you have this storybook situation where a guy from Nebraska played for the Huskers, won championships, comes home. So now you build up this idea of him, and there's a legitimate Messiah complex with Scott Frost. There is a legitimate group of fans that the minute that Scott Frost got off that plane and walked into the press conference, believed that he was going to be the greatest coach in college football history and believed that he was going to take Nebraska to the promised land and return them to the 90s so Husker fans would stop being a joke and stop being made fun of, that saying, hey, it's just like everything else. They're stuck in the 90s. They're like the 85 Bears fans of college football. And it's okay to think that way if you're delusional. I was one of those people who said I think Scott Frost will be very successful at Nebraska and have a very good career coaching this team, but I never said that day one he was going to change everything. To think that a coach will do that immediately is ridiculous. And there are coaches that in their second year have won championships, but you know what? They are legendary coaches. And I'm not saying that Scott Frost can't be that level. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I think Scott Frost, with time, could be the next Urban Meyer. Could be the next elite level coach. I'm not ready to say Nick Saban yet because Nick Saban is almost in his own class. I'm not ready to go there. But when you look at the record and you see 0-2, so when you look at the record and you look who we lost to, I know immediately you want to sit down in front of your keyboard and go on social media and bash him and bash this staff and do what we've done many times as Husker fans. Believe me, I've done it. I get reminded of it with my Facebook memories, especially this time of year, all too often about how I was with that stuff and how bad I was with Pelini. I don't want to get ahead of myself. I think I was really, really bad last season. I think several times I shared my sentiment with different GIFs of someone blowing their brains out. And I felt that way last year. We were 4-8. We were garbage. But I have not once said a bad thing about Scott Frost on social media, and I'll tell you why. Because this is not Mike Riley. This is not Bo Pelini. Nebraska does not have an easy schedule. They have one of the harder schedules in the country. First of all, Akron isn't a terrible football team. Granted, we didn't get to play them because of weather, but if we were to play Akron, they're not an awful football team. And we look at this too. Colorado came off a butt-whooping against in-state rival Colorado State. And I think Colorado isn't a bad team, and I have a legitimate shot with the Pac-12 South because the Pac-12 is not a great conference. Troy went 11-2 last year, including a win in Baton Rouge. So these are not bad football teams. And you know what? Nebraska had several opportunities to win both those games. It was just turnovers and penalties. And you know why that happens? Because it's a young football team. Bill Parcells, legendary coach, one of his most famous quotes is this: "You want me to make the meal, I need the ingredients." Scott Frost is going to be successful in Nebraska, but he just doesn't have the ingredients yet. And he started to recruit that way, and he's starting to get the guys there. But you know what? These are freshmen, sophomore players. They are not ready for the limelight. They are not ready to be elite. Experience is the most important ingredient for success in any level of football. I'm talking Pee-wee, I'm talking high school, I'm talking college, NFL. Our star quarterback, sorry, I'm such a homer, I'm starting to claim the team is we. But the star quarterback that Nebraska has, Adrian Martinez, is a true freshman. These are not juniors and seniors. There are sprinkled out through the team, sure, but the star players are not there. And you know what else? These losses. You lose by 5 one week, you lose by 6 the next. I'm sorry, 5. You lost by 5 in both games. When you lose by a combined 10 points in those 2 losses, Nebraska was never out of these games. They looked like they should have been against Troy. They did not play well at all, but they were never out of these games. Never once do you scratch your head. When you look at Chip Kelly and you look at Willie Taggart in those situations at Florida State and UCLA respectively, you are looking at 2 teams where you see that they look like they have no idea what they're doing. They look so out of place. I mean, Florida State lost by 23 points to Syracuse. And I'm not saying Syracuse is a bad team. No, I'm not. But I'm just saying they had no shot in that game. They had no shot against Virginia Tech, and they had to schedule Buckweed State to even have a chance at winning. Florida State is going to be a 3-9 or 4-8 team. UCLA, God knows how bad they're going to fall because they don't look very good either. They were competitive for maybe a half against Oklahoma, but that's it. So when you get ready to sharpen that pitchfork, look at Florida State and look at UCLA. And I know it's hard to be a Husker fan when you have to face the reality that the Kansas Jayhawks, good old Rock Chalk Jayhawk, has more wins than you right now. But keep in mind, this kind of mentality of they have to win immediately is ridiculous because Nebraska hasn't been a football school since the 90s. Nebraska is currently a volleyball school. So stop being delusional about Nebraska. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't want this for Nebraska. I want this for Nebraska. Are you kidding me? As a fan, you want your team to win a championship every season. As a fan, you want a team to go undefeated all the time. I'm that guy too, but I'm also realistic. And I also understand that to have success, you need experience and you need time. This isn't the NFL where you have a bunch of professional players and you expect to execute right away. This isn't that, okay? So that's my final thing. I didn't expect to go this long on Scott Frost, but the season has been disappointing for a lot of people, but there's a lot of football to be played. There's a whole entire season left, and I know it doesn't get any easier. You travel to Michigan this week. You play Wisconsin on the road. You play Ohio State on the road. It's not an easy schedule. The Big Ten is a stacked conference. But these players, when you watch them play, they have bought into Scott Frost. So it's time you start doing that. Speaking of Nebraska, we're going to stay on topic here. They will be playing Bethune-Cookman October 27th, my birthday, to replace the Akron game. So at least one win right there is guaranteed, right? I shouldn't say that. I think I jinxed them. But, yeah, I will not. I'll be flying back from Mexico during that game. So maybe catch it on my flight. So, yes, there has been a replacement game. Oh, boy. So moving on from Scott Frost, my other love, football-wise, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I haven't really had a chance to talk about them because, we weren't here last week. But they are currently 2-0. Some would say it's FitzMagic. You know what? I'm not going to jump on the Ryan Fitzpatrick bandwagon. I think the Buccaneers have a very good chance of going 3-0 this week against the Pittsburgh Steelers. But I don't want to jump ahead of myself here because Ryan Fitzpatrick, I've seen this on Twitter and Facebook, and it's true. I totally know what they're talking about. We, as Buccaneers fans, again, there you go with that Homer stuff saying we. As Buccaneers fans, we are stuck in the Fitzpatrick cycle. Now, for those of you unfamiliar with the Ryan Fitzpatrick cycle of quarterbacking, it starts this way. He ends up at a team as a backup. The starting quarterback, whatever the case may be, he might get injured, he might get suspended. In this case, Jameis has been suspended. Fitzpatrick will take over, play phenomenally, and pretty much win the starting position, and then suck and get traded. That is the Fitzpatrick cycle. It's happened with multiple teams. I've seen it happen. I know that it's happening. So I'm not going to get ahead of myself and say that Tampa Bay is going to be undefeated. I would absolutely want that. As I said before with Nebraska stuff, as a fan, of course you want your team to always be undefeated and win football games. That's asinine to say that you don't want those things. But I'm not ready to jump ship. See what I did there? Jump on the bandwagon and say that Fitzpatrick is the answer. Do I think he should be the starting quarterback even after this week? Absolutely. Totally agree with what Deshaun Jackson said. You got to stick with the hot hand. You got to stick with a guy that's been playing well. He's leading the NFL in passing yardages. He has 8 touchdowns. I picked him up on my fantasy team because they're playing the Steelers this week, and the Steelers' defense is just hot garbage. So before I get to the topic of Jameis Winston, I just wanted to this is the Homer episode. If you haven't figured out, Jake doing a solo episode of the Audible is just him being a homer. So yes, I'm excited. I do believe there's a little bit of FitzMagic. I think the team is just running on a different level when he's in there. And I think it's mostly because Fitzpatrick isn't a distraction. Jameis has always been a distraction. Even back in his Florida State days, he's been a distraction. I thought once he got drafted and once he went to Tampa, I thought he was going to turn his situation around. I thought he was actually going to do something differently and finally have something click in his head and be a legitimate franchise quarterback. Clearly that's not happened. He's been sued by the Uber driver that he allegedly sexually assaulted. I'm not a lawyer, but I got a strong feeling they're going to settle out of court. And that Uber driver is going to get a lot of money. Rightfully so. I mean, it's alleged. We don't know the exact story. I personally think she's telling the truth. Just given Jameis Winston's history, it doesn't seem like this is something he wouldn't do. So I side with her on this. And, yeah, get your money in this situation. So, yes, the Uber driver is suing Jameis. And if there wasn't already a distraction behind him, it's just gotten worse. And this is a great example of why Ryan Fitzpatrick has to be your quarterback. I don't think Ryan Fitzpatrick is going to be the answer for the future. I think you try and go and get a quarterback in the draft if you're Tampa. But I think he's the answer short term. I think if Ryan Fitzpatrick stays in at the quarterback position for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they will go 8-8 or 9-7 and maybe sneak in a wild card spot. And I've been saying that for 3 years now, but this is the best that this offense has looked in a long time. And they've had Mike Evans, they had Deshaun Jackson last year, and O.J. Howard. Those pieces are finally coming together. JPP was a nice addition to the defense. Quan Alexander, Levante David are solid linebackers. They've been solid linebackers their whole time with the Buccaneers. And I'm even talking Raheem Morris. Well, Levante I don't think came in around Raheem Morris. I'm talking Lovie Smith days stellar for Levante David. And he's a Nebraska guy, so yeah, double homer, I know. But going forward, FitzMagic, ride that out. I think you're playing with the football gods when you dress up like Deshaun Jackson at a press conference. It's almost like you're tempting fate. But I think no matter what, you go with Fitzpatrick. So the Pittsburgh Steelers playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this week, which in my mind, if you're an NFL team, when you look at your calendar, you've got to be happy whenever you play the Pittsburgh Steelers, because this is a team that I just don't understand why they haven't won more Super Bowls, especially under Mike Tomlin. This is a team that has Ben Roethlisberger, Antonio Brown, and I guess when he decides to play, Le'Veon Bell. Jesse James is a pretty competent tight end. We actually find out that James Conner is actually a pretty good running back, which is a great story. How does a team like this consistently have drama? How does this locker room keep delving into drama? Now, this is probably a segment I should have done with Brent, but I don't understand this. When you look at a team like New England, and granted, Tom Brady wrote this book where he said he thought about divorcing Belichick, which is just, okay, whatever. How does a team like Pittsburgh, say, let's use that example. Let's use the New England Patriots as an example. How is it that as long as Belichick has been there, he has kept, for the most part, a cap under that organization and not had a lot of drama? Yes, the Jimmy G trade and the whole Malcolm Butler stuff, and now apparently I think that's a lot of Tom Brady and not necessarily Belichick. But how does a coach like that have a cap on an organization? I think he's the longest tenured coach in the NFL right now. Has to be. Easily. 5 Super Bowl championships. And throughout that whole time, he has never once had a situation like the Le'Veon Bell situation. Now, you could argue about the Malcolm Butler stuff at the Super Bowl. I know that's a whole different topic. But he has never once had a situation like Le'Veon Bell. Now, the Antonio Brown stuff was a miscommunication. It was a personal matter. You know, it has nothing to do with all that. The trade me tweet, I don't hate that tweet because I think somebody sending that tweet was clearly trying to get his attention and piss him off, and it worked. But the practice stuff, personal matters, whatever, miscommunication. But Le'Veon Bell, if I'm Le'Veon Bell, this is one of the most storied franchises in the history of the league, the most winning franchise. If you're counting Super Bowls, they have 6. This would be the place to play. They've always had talent there. But why does the drama keep stirring up? And it's simple. I honestly think that Mike Tomlin has lost this team, and he lost them a long time ago. I think this defense has been lost ever since the Ryan Shazier injury last season against the Bengals. They have not been the same team. When you give up 42 points to the Chiefs, now the Chiefs have done a lot to add to that offense. They've got Kareem Hunt. They've got Tyreek Hill. They've got Travis Kelce. Patrick Mahomes is showing something I've said a long time ago, which he should have been starting ahead of Alex Smith, because I never bought into the Alex Smith hype. When you give up 42 points, go back last season, 45 points to Blake frickin' Bortles in the Jacksonville Jaguars. This defense, this team is just not what they've been. Will they still win the AFC North? Probably. Their only real competition, Bengals, Ravens, maybe. I don't trust the Bengals. I never do, because the Bengals, everybody knows how they are. Point of the matter is, why does Pittsburgh keep happening this? It is because Mike Tomlin has lost control of that team, and honestly, I don't know if he's still in Pittsburgh next season. And it's simply because of this, all this drama. It's definitely not on merit because the dude has not had a losing season at Pittsburgh. He's always been going to the playoffs. He's always been successful there. He just lost the team, which is such a baffling thing to me, but that happens. All right, so those are out of the way. Oh, almost forgot, there's more Steelers drama. According to Stormy Daniels' book, now look, with all her stuff with Trump, I'm not going to get into that here because this isn't the place for it, and I honestly don't give a crap. I don't really care about most of the things Stormy Daniels says. I just think this is funny. So in her new book, she says that she felt that she was terrified and forced into a kiss with Ben Roethlisberger. Whether or not this is true or not, I don't care. I just think, of course it has to do with Ben Roethlisberger. Of course it has to do with the Steelers. Because God forbid the Steelers get out of a week without some sort of drama outside of football. Ugh, man, talk about unlucky. All right, so those topics are done. Let's talk about week 4 in college football, my predictions. So the biggest games of the week, I guess, is what I would say. Now, some of these are, I'm going to be honest, are my what games to watch picks for the week. The weekly feature up on loudandopinionated.com. I mean, if you're listening to this, you might already be there. So check that article out while I'm talking to you. So let's get into it. A&M versus Bama. You know, I know I've been hard on Jimbo Fisher, and I'm always someone who criticizes the Aggies and A&M. And I think it's fair criticisms. I think he's going to have a good football team down the road. I think Jimbo, he's a good fit for Texas A&M. But, I mean, this Bama team might be the best football team I have seen in years. They are just that damn good. I think it's no question that the Crimson Tide take this one. I think A&M makes it entertaining for maybe a half part of the third quarter, if that. But I just think the depth and talent of Bama is going to take them through. Bama wins easily against the Aggies. Another what game to watch pick, TCU, the Horned Frogs, taking on the Longhorns of Texas. Now, Texas is looking good. I'll give them that. After the Maryland game, I thought, oh, no, here we go again. I mean, you can watch the college football hangover that I did of it. I was mocking them, after the first game, and I think that was a fair thing. Everybody was doing it. Now I'm the one getting mocked because Nebraska's 0-2, but that's beside the point. I think that they got back on track. USC, I think they did. And I think that they will do well. So, in this game, but I still think, based on what I saw last weekend with TCU, the way they played against Ohio State, and a game that could have really gone either way for most of that game, I got to go with the Horned Frogs. I think that there's just something about it. I think that they have a legitimate chance to compete against Oklahoma. I think right now the Big 12 has a 3-horse race. I think it's West Virginia, TCU, and Oklahoma. So, yeah, TCU wins this one. I think it does help Texas, though, that it is in Austin. I think that's also a key factor. I think Texas keeps it close. I think it'll be like a field goal, touchdown, one-score type game. I think Texas does keep it close. Next up, it's in a Big Ten matchup. Wisconsin looking to rebound after their loss in heartbreaking fashion to BYU. The Badgers taking on the Hawkeyes in Iowa City. Iowa's 3-0, but keep in mind their only real competition was Iowa State. And I don't think anybody confuses me with someone that likes Iowa. I'll give them credit when credit's due. When they do something noteworthy, I like to give credit to them. But I think Wisconsin rebounds. I think Wisconsin wins this one. I think just fundamentally Wisconsin's a better team. I don't think Iowa's bad, and I don't think Nate Stanley is a bad quarterback. I think he's smart. I think he protects the football. He threw, I believe, 6 interceptions all of last season. So, I think he's thrown 1 or 2 maybe this year. But I think Iowa isn't a bad team. I think they play well, but Wisconsin's just the better team. what game to watch pick. The Sun Devils. Herm Edwards, Arizona State Sun Devils taking on Washington. I put this here because I think Arizona State's an interesting situation. I was surprised they beat Michigan State. Granted, it was a field goal, but I thought Michigan State was on an upswing. I think they were back being the team that we're used to seeing. So seeing an Arizona State team beat them, granted, again, close one. I think that Arizona State got the right guy. I think Herm Edwards is going to be successful with the Sun Devils, but Washington wins this one. Washington knows that they have to win every single game the rest of the season to even think about being in a New Year's Six bowl after that loss to Auburn. Again, it hurts them that USC lost to Texas and UCLA's bad. Oregon looking good, though. Oregon's undefeated. I think they have a good start to their season. Again, they haven't played anybody. I think the non-conference schedule has been hurting the Pac-12. Before I get to the homer picks, this one's a little bit more random, but I feel like I have to talk about it because I think it's interesting. Lane Kiffin in the FAU Owls taking on UCF. Now, UCF is a team that I'm not surprised has been successful this season. I think Frost had such a good staff in place. Granted, he took most of them with him to Nebraska, but they still got his offensive coordinator from last season, and it's not shocking to me that they have been successful and been winning football games. I think this is a fun matchup, and I think Lane Kiffin does it. I think the Lane train upsets UCF. That's my upset pick of the week, is the Owls upset the Golden Knights. So now it's time for the homer picks. Nebraska on the road, going to the big house, taking on Jim Harbaugh. Both former quarterbacks, both coaches of their alma maters. It's a weird parallel between these two. I don't think Scott Frost, I had that big long segment about Nebraska fans already complaining about the Scott Frost era, but I don't think it's the same situation where I think a lot of Michigan fans are antsy with Harbaugh. So it is weird of like this alternate universe situation, parallels between these two teams. Now, I don't want to sound like a homer and pick Nebraska, but I think Scott Frost absolutely has his back against the wall. And I know I spent the first 10, 12 minutes talking about how we shouldn't perceive it that way, but I think there is that kind of mentality in the locker room, at least a little bit. I don't think Frost himself truly believes that. He's a very calm, cool, collected guy. That is a guy that you could tell was mentored by Tom Osborne. You just see that in him. So I don't care what you guys say in the comments, I think Nebraska wins. I think Shea Patterson plays well. He's really come around after that opening loss to Notre Dame. I think Michigan's kind of starting to find their identity in this season. I think Shea Patterson's playing well. But I think it's bound to happen for Nebraska, right? They keep losing these close games. I think Nebraska finds a way to get it done. But Nebraska is going to have to play perfect. They cannot turn the ball over like they have been the first few games, and they have to be smarter with penalties. But I think Nebraska does it. And lastly, Iowa State's going to be taking on Akron. Akron's no slouch, but I think Iowa State finally gets a W. I mean, going from Iowa to Oklahoma back-to-back weeks, that's obviously going to be tough on this team. But I think this is where they do it. They're going to be very emotional after the tragedy that happened in Ames earlier this week. So they're going to be very emotional. They're going to come out there angry and fired up. And I think Iowa State wins that one. So that's it for my college football picks this week. I know they're not as many as the NFL picks. I usually do every single NFL game. I just think it's easy to do these handful of picks for college football because if I were to do all 130 teams, it would be a 6-hour podcast, and I don't want to do that. So now it's time to move on to the NFL. All right, so I'm going to do my best not to blaze through all these, give you a little bit of analysis on each game. But you know what? Some teams I just don't care. It's just a simple fact. That's just the simple fact of the matter, you know? All right, so first up, I'm skipping the Thursday night game because by the time this posts, it'll already have happened, so there's no need to make a pick there. Giants, Texans, I'm going to take the Giants, believe it or not. I think they have a lot of problems, but I think they find a way to win. They really need to fix that offensive line, though. Good old Eli. Staying in there, I guess. 49ers going to Arrowhead, playing the Chiefs. I think Patrick Mahomes rides the hot hand, still keeps playing well. I think Kansas City is a legitimate contender to win the AFC West, and I mostly say that because Raiders and Broncos, I'm not sold on them. So, yes, Chiefs win that one. Colts taking on the Eagles. It's going to be Andrew Luck going up against Carson Wentz. I like the Eagles in this one. Bengals taking on the Panthers. I think the Bengals will win because this is what the Bengals do. They play really well. First few weeks look good, and they're about to crumble at some point. Saints-Falcons, NFC South matchup. Now, I don't like either teams because I'm a Bucs fan, but I'm going to take the Falcons here. I think Matt Ryan exposes the Saints. Now, everybody was talking up the Saints. I just don't see them doing it, you know? I don't buy into it. Maybe a little bit of my Homer side showing up. Shut up. Bears taking on the Cardinals. I think the Cardinals keep losing, and I think the Bears, they've got a lot of momentum. They should have beat the Packers week 1, but I think they've really rallied around Khalil Mack defensively. I think Trubisky does enough to not make a lot of mistakes. The Bears win. Pats taking on the Lions. Not spending time on this. You know who's going to win that one. Patriots easily. Bills, Vikings. Obviously the Vikings. Packers, Redskins, Packers. A lot of these matchups seem pretty obvious. Raiders against Dolphins. I think the Raiders start the season 0-3 in the Gruden era, and I think it's karma for getting rid of Khalil Mack. I really do. And that's also because Gruden didn't come to Tampa. Titans versus Jags. I'm going to take the Jags in this one. Jacksonville continues to be a team that I said 2 years ago, look out for Jacksonville. They're making moves. This is a team that has built itself through the draft and been successful. Jags win this one. Broncos taking on the Ravens. I think the Ravens win mostly because, again, I don't think the AFC South is very strong, or AFC West, is very strong, and I think the Broncos prove my point. We got the battle for Los Angeles. Now, this is how stupid I am. When I wrote this down in my head, I was thinking this game should be a WWE-style loser leaves town kind of match. And that's just an insight to my psyche when it comes to show prep. But I have the Rams beating the Chargers in the battle for Los Angeles. Cowboys beat the Seahawks. Man, oh man, how the mighty have fallen with Seattle. They do not look good at all. And, of course, the Monday night pick. I said this earlier. I think the Buccaneers beat the Steelers in a shootout. And those are my NFL picks this week. Thank you so much for listening to the Audible. I kind of really enjoyed doing this solo stuff and kind of being a little ranty and wild and obnoxious. Let me know what you guys think of this episode. Maybe I can work out an idea where I do the college football hangover for the YouTube channel, but if you'd like to see me do more things like this, I'm sure I could work something out. I know back when the Audible had its own website, I used to do Jake's Takes, where it would be like 20 minutes of me picking one topic going on in football, and I would just rant about it for 20, 30 minutes. If you want something like that, let me know. I would gladly love to do that. Let me know in the comments in the YouTube video. Let me know on social media. Email me, jake@loudandopinionated.com. I'll gladly do it. I want to know. So, yes, thank you so much for listening. You can get the show at loudandopinionated.com. You could also get it on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Google Play Music. Anywhere you get your podcasts, you can get it there. Also, if you would like to contribute to the site, email me, jake@loudandopinionated.com. We can put your article up on the website, let the world know how you feel, how loud and opinionated you are about something. We do not believe in silencing anyone, so if you want to do that there, please do it. Have a great day. Watch some football. Get the word out there. Tell your friends. Tell your family. It's worth listening to. I'm going to shut up now. I'm rambling.